All right, Nick, let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, by now, Pittsburgh fans know that the Steelers have selected to stay with Mike Tomlin as the head coach of this franchise. But I think it's really interesting. We have some points that we want to make about comparing and contrasting what the Steelers are doing here versus some other teams around the league and how they have handled their situation and what it means for the Steelers. But before we get into that, as always, I'm Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, Pittsburgh Steelers have decided to stay with Mike Tomlin as the head coach of this franchise. Other changes could be made, but Tomlin is here to stay. But I want to compare and contrast that for a minute with how some other teams in the NFL, specifically the Dallas Cowboys, have decided to deal with the Mike McCarthy situation. Let's get into the articles and we could talk more about it on the other side. This first one is from over on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. It says, despite a widespread public outcry and another embarrassing early exit from the postseason, the Steelers are not planning to make any move involving coach Mike Tomlin, according to team sources. Now compare that to this article from Yahoo Sports saying, Mike McCarthy's contract with the Dallas Cowboys ran out, and his time with the team has run its course. McCarthy, whose contract expired after the 2024 season, won't return as Dallas's head coach next season. Sources confirmed this to Yahoo Sports' Jory Epstein, and Cowboys owner Jerry Jones has confirmed this in a statement Monday afternoon. I think it's really interesting, the dichotomy of these two situations and how they're being handled. I think this means there's a lot to be said about what the Steelers are doing here, not necessarily for the better. I'm curious what your thoughts are on this one, Nick, but before we get to you, Steelers fans, in the comment section below, we want to hear from you before we say our piece. What do you think about the decision to keep Tomlin? Do you think it's the right move? Do you think he has gas in the tank? They just need to tweak a couple of things and this team is ready to roll once again? Or has it been too long without enough success? What is it, 16 years since they've won a playoff game? Or, 2016 since they won a playoff game? It seems like 16 years, I would imagine. Is it too much? Should they have moved on? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what do you think about these two different handlings of the coaching situation?
So I think the Pittsburgh Steelers, to me, how they handled their head coach situation here, it was an absolutely stunning decision, right? You talk about taking a situation that was just a disaster. They came in, they were totally outclassed by the Baltimore Ravens. We've seen this every single postseason for the better part of a decade now. And it's not just that they stuck with Tomlin, it's that they immediately did it. They didn't do any evaluation, they didn't even do any sit downs, they didn't do any exit interviews, like end of season interview kind of things. They said, after the game's over, after they get dominated and embarrassed on national television, once again in a playoff game, the Steelers leadership says, yeah, we're fine with this. We're okay with this. The Dallas Cowboys, on the other hand, for all the crap the Cowboys get, a lot of it deservedly so, they actually made a decision. No, we're not okay with this kind of crap. And they actually moved on from their head coach. Nothing against Mike McCarthy. The Cowboys just weren't satisfied with what they were getting. The Steelers waited about 5 seconds to decide, yeah, we're okay with this. And to me, that's a problem. Look, I have a little bit of a rant here. I believe in the National Football League, there are about six marquee franchises, right? You've got the Dallas Cowboys, you've got the Raiders, you've got the 49ers, the Packers, the Giants, and the Steelers, right? And I think each one of those teams embodies a certain element to the National Football League that makes it great. The Cowboys are glamour and drama, right? They're always kind of must-see TV, whether they're collapsing or playing good football. The New York Giants, they're a classy organization. They're New York City, right? They're the nice suits. The Mara family's been in football forever. They're class. The Packers are tradition. Coach Vince Lombardi. You've got Holmgren, you've got LaFleur, you've got McCarthy, you've got quarterbacks, you've got Starr, you've got Rodgers, Favre, right? This is just tradition. Lambeau Field, the Packers are tradition. The 49ers, they're innovative. Bay Area, San Francisco, West Coast offense, Bill Walsh, now with Kyle Shanahan, right? The Raiders, they're Mavericks. They've done things their own way. They'll always do things their own way. It's kind of crazy. A lot of times they're terrible. A lot of times they're great. But they do things completely their own way. The Steelers fit in too. They're the excellence team. They're the team that's not focused on drama. They're a team focused on excellence. They're not focused on being Mavericks or Renegades. The closest they are to being a Renegade is when they play that song in the fourth quarter, right? They're not necessarily innovative, right? They're not necessarily, they got a lot of tradition, but they don't live by tradition the way the Packers do. And I tell you what, the Steelers, they're a tough team, but they're not the classiest team in the world, right? There's been a lot of James Harrison knocking people out that makes me think they're not the classiest bunch. Nothing against it, it's just how it is. They're a team that's always been committed to excellence, winning. That's what the Steelers have been about. Doesn't mean they always win. Doesn't mean they always win championships. It just means no matter what, the orientation has always been to excellence. And for the first time in my lifetime, and honestly, for the first time in probably 50 years, this Steelers organization is clearly not oriented toward excellence, right? They're oriented to mediocrity. That's what they are. I don't care about the winning seasons record in a row or non-losing seasons record in a row. Who cares? We're in a championship business. That's what this is. That's what the Steelers always were about: winning championships, being excellent, good offense, good defense, good special teams, good coaching, good front office, good fans across the board. And yet the Steelers leadership has made, in my opinion, the worst decision they've made in years. I can understand staying with Tomlin, but for God's sakes, take at least a week to evaluate. Don't just look at what happened at the end of the season where they lost every single game when it mattered. Their last five, trailed in every single game. They never led and had another embarrassing postseason exit. I'm not a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers personally. I'm a fan of the National Football League. I'm a fan of what the Steelers bring to the National Football League, at least historically. But here's the problem. They aren't doing it anymore. And this, I think, today is a dark day for the Pittsburgh Steelers when you have a team like the Dallas Cowboys, who traditionally they're oriented toward drama and making news over excellence. That's who the Cowboys are, right? That's how they've always been. And yet today, the Cowboys are more focused on excellence than the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's disappointing to me. It's disappointing to the National Football League. I don't know what the Steelers do from here, but big changes need to happen, and I hope they happen eventually.
Yeah, Nick, and I think you're 100% right about this and the Steelers and their approach to coaching and how they handle their coaches. It's kind of been something they hung their hat on, something that they have, rested their laurels on for the last, few decades, starting all the way back in 1969 with Chuck Noll. Chuck Noll's a coach who's with the Steelers for such a long time, 22 years. It was a really long time to be with a team. You got Bill Cowher, who's with the team 14 years. Tomlin now, the 17 years with the team. Really, really excellent records from all of these guys. Tomlin, at the beginning of his career, really, really solid. But let's go back and look at why Chuck Noll was kept for so long. Beginning of his career, 1969, 1972, shortly after he started his head coaching career, AFC Coach of the Year. What happens end of his career? 1991. 3 years before that, 1989, he won NFL Coach of the Year again. This is a guy who started out his career, a legendary coaching season, 1972, did a really great job, and he ended it strong as well in 1989. You look at Bill Cowher, 1992 AP NFL Coach of the Year. The very year he started, he won Coach of the Year. You look at the end of his career, 2004, also Sporting News NFL Coach of the Year. 2 years before he left in 2006. Again, Bill Cowher, start of his career, fantastic coaching job. End of his career, he still had the gas in the tank and pull out another very, very high-level coaching season. Now we look at Mike Tomlin. Started in 2007, 2008, Motorola NFL Coach of the Year. Real great performance, like we've seen with Steelers coaches of old. Starting out very, very strong, really great hire. Since then, nothing. Tomlin's been around for a long time, 17 years. It hasn't really recreated that coaching magic that we saw very early on in his career. And quite frankly, the last couple of years, it's been bad. It really has been. And he hasn't duplicated what these Steelers coaches of old that they say, we haven't fired a coach since 1969. It just has not happened. We've been around these guys. We've had 3 coaches since 69. I think it's time to start to look in the mirror and say, maybe we don't hang our hat on that anymore. Maybe we look at the excellence tree once again. Maybe we look at, are these coaches performing to the level we were? Because Noll did at the end of his career. Cowher did at the end of his career. But Tomlin, he isn't doing the same thing that these guys did at the end of their careers. And I think it might be time to move in a different direction.